Hey guys, Budcat7 here. Okay, it is Friday, January 17th, 2020, and I'd like to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research Channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. All right, guys. Well, as you know, there's many researchers, many alternative researchers around the world sort of beg the question about the types of engineering and building techniques that seem to be shared all over the world, and places and the time periods given for these civilizations to exist would have no contact with each other. So there's been any number of people who sort of put that question out there. How does that happen? And some of the people actually specialize in these things, and Andrew at Ancient History Criticisms is certainly one of those people. I mean, this whole channel is more or less dedicated to demonstrating that these shared building practices, cutting practices in stone or forming or whatever it is, that's either probably both. I mean, this is one of the things. It's in all of this alternative research, it always, to the lay person, I guess, or the people who just introduce the whole thing, they immediately have to think in black and white. Either the stone is cut or it's geopolymer, or it's got to be one or the other. They couldn't be using both. And I've said many times on my channel that I thought that people with knowledge in all different types of working with stone would be incorporating all different types of materials in the constructions that they would build, similar to that what we do today. You see, our buildings and constructions are made of a multitude of different materials, disparate materials. Okay, they're not just one thing, whatever it is, from whatever the foundation is made out of, what is constructed of, steel girders, block, whatever. It's, we combine all of these different things into building something. And why shouldn't the people who existed in the past? But Andrew is one of those who just specializes in these things, and it seems to be in many places around the world that these nubs and bevel blocks appear in societies and civilizations that had nothing to do with each other, according to mainstream. But it seems that these practices were shared, and as I said, there's some researchers who go out of their way to demonstrate that, like Brian Foster and LAH, Sylvia at New Earth, whatever, whomever it is. And then, of course, Phil, with his latest videos, okay, the ancient stone language of these nubs could be some sort of ancient stone language, a language of the engineers. Knowledge can be passed very easily, so, but we've been going back and forth about it, Bill and Andrew and I, of it being more of a standardized thing. See, nobody's ever really said anything about any sort of standardization or anything like that, whether it be polygonal stone construction or the metal clamps with the some stone constructions, but different places in the world just happen to be the same thing. So you have those types of things, the astronomical alignments, the pyramidal shape, the sarcophagus, mummification, all of these sort of shared things around the world. Okay, in civilizations and societies that supposedly had nothing to do with each other, certainly seems that they have more contact with each other than previously thought. And I think they're starting to get a clue, but it's so slow because the old vanguards got to go away. They got to die off, and these new people come in using their heads more than these old fuddy-duddies who just stuck. So, well, it was, how do these things happen? There's no less in the Americas that these things could have occurred. Certainly, we heard, Andrew and Phil talk about Peru and the nubs there and different kinds of constructions, etc. So, My interest in it was always with the coins, these ancient coins found. And this is how I ran into it. I've been interested in this for a very long time. I've read some very scholarly articles. There's some contemporary criticism and stuff. I don't want to get too far in the weeds because I want to go through this whole article for you. And it's about the ancients in America, evidence of the ancients being in America, ancient peoples. Okay, so it's more of a sort of compilation of different finds and accounts and archaeological finds. So it's all put in one place. It doesn't go too much in detail. You're going to know some of them. Certainly, we all know some of them from being in this game for a while. So I want to go through them to the end for you, and it covers a lot of different things. But coins brought me. I was always fascinated by ancient coins being found in the Americas, and why would that reason should be. And there's reasons for that too. But I don't. As I said, I don't want to get too far into it. This one's pretty recent, 2017. It was updated by this Stephen Wagner guy who wrote the article for liveabout.com here. But it's very interesting. It compiles everything into a sort of one place. In 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Many of us learned that rhyme, part of a longer history poem, when being taught in school that Christopher Columbus discovered America. Although nothing can be taken away from Columbus' daring voyage if it really happened, he certainly was not the first to arrive on the shores of the Americas. For one thing, there were already people here. Many native and farther back than anybody thinks. Many Native American nations inhabited what later became known as North and South America, and even the Caribbean islands where Columbus landed. Columbus probably wasn't even the first white man, quote unquote, to make it here. It's fairly well documented that the Icelander Leif Erikson successfully sailed to North America in the year 1000, almost 500 years prior to Columbus's voyage. In fact, there's a growing amount of evidence suggesting that a lot of the familiar history of human exploration and discovery, quote unquote, by our ancestors as we were taught it may be quite wrong. There is hard evidence of ancient civilizations making their mark in places where, according to traditionally accepted history, they just shouldn't be. Here's an overview of some of the most remarkable and fascinating cases. Greek and Romans in the New World, and it starts off with coins. Roman coins have been found in Venezuela and Maine. Roman coins were found in Texas at the bottom of an Indian mound in Round Rock. The mound is dated at approximately 800 AD. In 1957, near Phoenix City, Alabama, a small boy found a coin in a field from Syracuse on the island of Sicily and dating from 490 BC. In the town of Heavener, Oklahoma, another out-of-place coin was found in 1976. Experts identified it as a bronze tetradrachm originally struck in Antioch, Syria in 63 AD and bearing the profile of Emperor Nero. In 1882, a farmer in Cass County, Illinois, picked up a bronze coin, later identified as a coin of Antiochus IV, one of the kings of Syria who reigned from 175 BC to 164 BC and who is mentioned in the Bible. Pottery. Roman pottery was unearthed in Mexico that, according to its style, has been dated to the 2nd century AD. Inscriptions. In 1966, a man named Manfred Metcalf stumbled upon a stone in the state of Georgia that bears an inscription that is very similar to ancient writing from the island of Crete, called Cretan linear A and B writing, quote unquote. In the early 1900s, Bernardo da Silva Ramos, a Brazilian rubber tapper working in the Amazon jungle, found many large rocks on which was inscribed more than 2,000 ancient scripts about the old world, quote unquote. Near Rio de Janeiro, high on a vertical wall of rock 3,000 feet up, is an inscription that reads, Tyre, Phoenicia, Badazir, firstborn of Jethbal, and dated to the middle of the 9th century BC. Near Paraíba, Brazil, an inscription on Phoenician has been translated, in part as, quote, we are sons of Canaan from Sidon, the city of the king. Commerce has cast us on this distant shore, a land of mountains. We sacrificed a youth for the exalted gods and goddesses in their 19th year of Hiram, our mighty king. We embarked from Ezion Geber into the Red Sea and voyaged with 10 ships. We were at sea together for 2 years around the land belonging to Ham, Africa, but were separated by a storm, literally from the hand of Baal, and we were no longer with our companions. So we have come here, 12 men and 3 women, on a shore which I, the admiral, control, but auspiciously may the gods and goddesses favor us. Unquote. The Kensington runestone, discovered in Kensington, Minnesota in 1898, contains an inscription describing an expedition of Norsemen into the interior of what is now North America. It is estimated that this expedition took place in the 1300s, where I'm sure they met a lot of large hominids who built mounds and had a lot of copper. In 1980, P.M. Leonard and J.L. Glenn from the Hogle Zoological Garden, Salt Lake City, visited a rock outcropping in Colorado that was reputed to be inscribed with peculiar markings, quote unquote. Leonard and Glenn believe they are excellent examples of Consane Ogham writing, a type ascribed to the ancient Celts. One of the many inscriptions was translated as, quote, route guide. To the west is the frontier town with standing stones as boundary markers, unquote. A round fish-sized stone was found during the early 1890s in a cemetery near Nashville, Tennessee. Its front was inscribed with symbols thought to be Libyan, pre-100 AD style. It translates as, quote, the colonists pledged to redeem, unquote. Pictures. An experienced botanist has identified plants in an ancient fresco painting as a pineapple and a specific species of squash, both native to the Americas. Yet the fresco is in the Roman city of Pompeii. Statues. In 1933, a burial at Calixtlahuaca, Mexico, archaeologist Jose Garcia Peon discovered a small carved head with foreign, quote unquote, features in an undisturbed burial site. It was later identified by anthropologist Robert Hein Geldern as unquestionably, quote unquote, from the Hellenistic Roman school of art and suggested a date of around AD 200, quote unquote. Structures. Many stone chambers dot the New England countryside, and most archaeologists insist they are all potato cellars built long ago by farmers. Others argue that they are too sophisticated for such a mundane application. One is built into a hillside at Upton, Massachusetts, has sophisticated corbelling that follows the style of Irish and Iberic chambers. It's theorized that it was really built by Europeans around 700 AD, long before the Leif Erikson voyage, or by people already there long before that. Ships. In 1886, the remains of a shipwreck were found in Galveston Bay, Texas. Its construction is typically Roman. Toys, a doll made of wood and wax, was found deep in a well of sacrifice, quote unquote, at Chichen Itza, Mexico, in which is written Roman script. Tombs. In the Mayan ruins of Palenque, a stone sarcophagus was found that is very much in the style of ancient Phoenicians. The far-traveling Egyptian statues. In 1914, archaeologist M.A. Gonzalez was excavating some Mayan ruins in the city of Acajutla, Mexico, when he was surprised by the discovery of 2 statuettes that were clearly Egyptian, one male and one female. The carvings bore ancient Egyptian dress and cartouches. They are thought to depict Osiris and Isis. Inscriptions. Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs have been found in New South Wales. I don't know why they mention this. It's not the Americas, but it's interesting anyway. Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs are found in New South Wales, Australia. Located on a rock cliff in the National Park Forest of the Hunter Valley north of Sydney, the enigmatic carvings have been known since the early 1900s. There are more than 250 carvings of familiar Egyptian gods and symbols, including a life-size engraving of the god Anubis. The hieroglyphs tell the story of explorers who were shipwrecked in a strange and hostile land, and the untimely death of their royal leader, Lord Jezeb. From this information, scholars have been able to date the voyage to somewhere between 1779 and 2748 BC. Fossils. In 1982, archaeologists digging at Fayum near the Siwa Oasis in Egypt uncovered fossils of kangaroos and other Australian marsupials. Language. There are striking similarities between the languages of ancient Egypt and those of the Native Americans that inhabited the areas around Louisiana about the time of Christ. B. Fell, that would be Barry Fell, of the Epigraphic Society, has stated that the language of the Atacapas, and to a lesser extent those of the Tanika and Chitimacha tribes, have affinities with the Nile Valley languages involving just those words one would associate with the Egyptian trading communities of 2,000 years ago. This mention again and again of trade and commerce and all those things. You got to understand something about trade and commerce, guys, and its sort of dynamics that it creates with security guaranteed over extensive periods of time. Trading over extensive periods of time develops into certain dynamics that are just common among what happens when trading is engaged in these ways. So we're going to go over that in the next video. I'm going to do another video right after this one about the ancient canal and artificial harbor builders, because this is from somewhere in 5,000, 6,000 BC here in the Americas, and it's just got to be talked about because it puts everything together and a lot to do with the stone walls of New York and New England. I see them correspond with the times that these things could have been built. And trade has a lot to do with it. Artifacts near the Neabian River outside Penrith, New South Wales. The scarab beetle, a familiar Egyptian symbol carved from onyx, was unearthed. Another was found in Queensland, Australia. Tombs. The April 5th, 1909 edition of the Phoenix Gazette carried a front-page article about the discovery and excavation of an Egyptian tomb in the Grand Canyon by other than the Smithsonian. The Smithsonian has since denied the knowledge of any such discovery, and many denials of many things. They just control and filter all knowledge. The Scattered Tribes of Israel inscriptions. In 1889, the Smithsonian's Mound Survey project discovered a stone in a burial mound in eastern Tennessee on which is inscribed ancient Hebrew lettering. Known as the Bat Creek Stone, experts have identified its letters as being Paleo-Hebrew dating from the 1st or 2nd century AD. Some of the letters spell out for Judea, quote-unquote. An abridged version of the Ten Commandments was found carved into the flat face of a large boulder resting on the side of Hidden Mountain near Los Lunas, New Mexico, known as the Los Lunas inscription. Its language is Hebrew, and the script is the Old Hebrew alphabet with a few Greek letters mixed in. There's many of these hybrid languages, seems, in the Americas, which interests me highly. Artifacts. In June 1860, David Wyrick found an artifact on the general shape of Keystone near Newark, Ohio, that is covered in 4 ancient Hebrew inscriptions translated as Holy of Holies, King of the Earth, the Law of God, and the Word of God. In November of that same year, Wyrick found an inscribed stone in a burial mound about 10 miles south of Newark, Ohio. The stone is inscribed on all sides with a condensed version of the Ten Commandments, or Decalogue, in a peculiar form of post-exilic square Hebrew letters. A robed and bearded figure on the front is identified as Moses in letters spanning over his head. Asians on the West Coast. Stories. Indian traditions tell of many houses seen on Pacific waters. Could they have been ships from Asia? Chinese history tells a charming account of voyages to the land of Fusang, quote-unquote. Old Spanish documents describe Oriental ships off the Mexican coast in 1576. Coins. In the summer of 1882, a miner in British Columbia found 30 Chinese coins 25 feet below the surface. The examined coins of this style were invented by the Emperor Hung around 2637 BC. Artifacts. Japanese explorers and traders left steel blades in Alaska and their distinctive pottery in Ecuador. Underwater explorations off the California coast have yielded stone artifacts that seem to be anchors and line weights. The style and type of stone point to Chinese origins. structures. California's East Bay walls, ancient low rock walls east of San Francisco Bay, have long been a mystery. No one knows who built them or why. In 1904, Dr. John Fryer, professor of Oriental languages at UC Berkeley, declared, quote, "This is undoubtedly the work of Mongolians. The Chinese would naturally wall themselves in as they do in all of their towns in China," unquote. Maybe, and if you want to see some of these walls that they're talking about right here, I have some of my Facebook page there, discussion group, Stonewall Research. So if you want to see some of those walls, they're right there on my channel, kindly given to me by one of the group members. So that's the end of the article here, but just again, there's certainly there's controversy over many of these things. I mentioned that the bat stone there with the Hebrew lettering on it, and people who have examined this thing, they mentioned Dr. Ken Fader in here, hoax expert. He's a hoax expert, but he's never solved any hoaxes or anything. He's just an expert on hoaxes, but he hasn't ever solved the hoax himself. He just reports on ones that have already been reported about. And I was on the radio with him on Coast to Coast, where I flustered him quite a bit, and you can hear that on my channel. But this whole notion that the Backstreet Stone is a fraud, and Fader said they demolished any claims of the stone's authenticity, is nonsense. Their reasons for this is so convoluted. I can't go into it because I'm going to run out of time, but both this and the Carthaginian coins and discrediting Barry Fell, who's dead and can't defend himself, okay, the reasons for this are borderline paranoid, delusional. I'm not even joking, okay? I minored in psychology in college and was top student, okay? These people's reasons are more convoluted than any that they would assert with alternative researchers by great degree, okay, as I'm not going to get into it, but their reasoning behind how these things were faked, like this one, for example, somebody minted fake coins back in the 1800s and went around the country dispersing them here and there with the hopes that in the future people would find them and be confounded or whatever, okay, in the 1800s where, a penny was a lot of money. Somebody was minting fakes and spreading around all over the country in remote places that nobody would ever think about looking into, okay? So this is an example of delusional thinking of these people, and the same is no less for the Bat Creek Stone, okay? With these ancient Hebrewic letters on there. All right, and you can see a lot of similar kinds of things and research into coins, etc., on Harry Hubbard's channel. He's an